Sunday, and that means it's time for the All Effin' Wrestling Show. JFB, tell me, what do we got on the show today?
Well, we got John. How do you pronounce your last name?
I pronounce it Ellul, but everyone pronounces it differently. So however you guys want to go, no problem.
We got John Ellul in the studio. We're going to talk about Adrian Adonis, and then we're going to do our WrestleMania Night 2 predictions.
All this and more on the All Effin' Wrestling Show.
Ding, ding, ding. Hit the intro.
Coming to you live from the Effin' Worldwide Media Studios, located in parts unknown.
It's the All Effin' Wrestling Show.
With your hosts, Canada Dry, in the JFB.
Tell me how it's priced. Tell me if the item is for sale. And tell me.
Good morning, everybody. Afternoon. If I don't see you till dinner, good evening. I am, of course, the Prime Minister of Sinister. I'm the JFB, James from Boston.
And I'm, of course, the patron saint of all of professional wrestling. I am that gingered up, bubbly son of a bitch. I'm Canada Dry, damn it.
Woo!
And I'm so excited to have John Ellul on the show today. We have a connection with this guy. Even though we're meeting him for the first time, we got that Adrian Adonis connection that, I feel like Adrian's watching right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the flower show. I feel in bloom. I'm ready to rock and roll. John, how the hell are you doing?
I'm doing well, guys. I'm doing really well. Thank you. And thank you for having me, firstly, on the show. And I think you're right. Adrian, I think, is with us. We're obviously going to talk quite a bit about him. But what's interesting and what some of your viewers, listeners may not know is it's the anniversary, just the week we've just done, of the huge WrestleMania 3 match that Adrian was part of with Roddy Piper, that incredible heated match that the two of them had, where Adrian lost his hair and Piper so-called retired for the first time back in 1987, so 36 years ago this week.
So let's just get in that really quickly. So he was supposed to go over, wasn't he?
That's what he said. Yeah, that's what. Well, I've interviewed a number of people for this book that we're going to be talking about. Flowers for Adrian was the name I've given it. Number of people I spoke to, including one of his daughters, one of his really, really good friends who was called Joey Gaynor, who some people may have heard of, a stand-up comedian. And according to them, obviously you're getting a lot of this secondhand because Adrian's not been with us for many years. But he was given the impression that he might go over, or at least there was going to be a situation where he would get something in return. So there may be a return match the next year and he would go over. And I think he felt broken promises of what led him to leave the WWF very shortly after WrestleMania.
So we've talked to Angie, his daughter, on the show a long time ago. So was there some sort of money that wasn't paid?
That's more than one person told me that in the writing of this book, was that exactly that he was under the impression effectively from WWF and Vince McMahon that, because it's quite a sacrifice to lose your hair as a wrestler and to put someone else over. So he wanted to be made whole for that. He wanted something in return, which was going to be a significant payment. And when it came after WrestleMania, he wasn't paid what he thought he was going to be paid. You know, whether that's speculation, whether that's actually what happened, you know, as in wrestling, lots of people have lots of different interpretations. But yeah, there was definitely a payment issue that he told various friends about.
Vince is famous for the bait and switch, right?
Exactly.
He promises big numbers. You're gonna be rich.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden, the guys look at the paycheck after, like, who's the author of this?
So it could have exactly be exactly that type of situation where Vince says whatever he needs to get Adrian and Piper in the ring to get what he needs out of them, and then the minute it's done, you know, he's served his purpose and then he moves on, which is a real sad story for him.
Yeah. What was it about Adrian that Vince saw that Vince wanted to bring to the WWF at that time?
Well, it's interesting, you know, because what a lot of people may not remember that far back, and I only found it out from doing research because I got into wrestling in the early 90s after Adrian had passed away. He passed away in 1988. And he actually worked for the WWF a couple of times. He first worked there in 81 for Vince's dad, Vince Sr., and he did a really incredible 9-month run where he headlined Madison Square Garden as a solo wrestler. He then came back in 84 and had an incredible run with Dick Murdoch as part of the North-South Connection, where they won the tag titles. He then went away for a little bit in 85 and came back in the later part of 85. And that is the era that most people will know him for, where he metamorphosized into adorable Adrian, the gay gimmick, call it what you will. And I think, you know, we saw this trend, didn't we? Where Vince would bring back, Vince Jr., that is, he would bring back wrestlers who'd worked for his father, who'd worked for him before, if they were willing to do a little bit of a silly gimmick. You know, Mike Rotunda came back with the IRS gimmick. Tony Atlas came back with. So these reliable guys who he knew were good workers, who he knew would be willing for a good paycheck to maybe poke a bit of fun at themselves. And yeah, he did an incredible job with that gimmick, I think.
Oh yeah,
I think he really loved that gimmick. He just had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
If you see some of his pictures that he's got out there, he's just a really zany guy.
Yeah. And what's interesting is interviewed a number of people for this book. A Japanese expert and historian and interviewer who was good friends with Adrian called Fumi Saito, who people may have heard of, and Jerry Briscoe, Hall of Famer, Tully Blanchard, Don Morocco, lots and lots of names. And I put that question to each of them. I was like, you know, whether you were working WWF at the time or whether you were friends with Adrian at the time, what did you think when you saw this gimmick turn up in 1986? And it was funny to see their different reactions. You know, some of them were Rick Rogers, who worked with him in Portland, just said, was just a gimmick. You know, it was just, he was a professional. Him and Vince have had a conversation and he said, yeah, what the hell, let's do this gimmick, it might be fun and I'm going to earn a lot of money. And then other people, you know, Jerry Briscoe said, I thought he was mad. I did not know why he did it. And I asked him backstage, what are you doing? And he just said, it's just a bit of fun, you know, let's see where it goes. And I think that sums up Adrian perfectly. He liked to have fun.
Yeah. So let's ask a question here that's really basic, and people might want to know this. Why did you write the book?
Yeah,
it's a great question. My wife's asked me that quite a lot on these evenings and weekends spent writing it. So just to take it right back for everyone's benefit, so they know a little bit about me and they can have confidence in reading the book. I'm obviously UK based. I'm a trained journalist. I've been to journalism college, spent several years as a newspaper reporter. I now work in the PR world and things like that as my day job. And I had this kind of nagging feeling of me that I wanted to go back to journalism and apply it to, you know, my love of pro wrestling, which I've been a fan of for many, many years. So I also write for a wrestling magazine in the UK called Wrestle Talk that people may have heard of. But I wanted a kind of meaty project to get stuck into. And my first love has been the history of wrestling, the kind of recent modern history of the 80s and 90s. And, you know, everyone's written about Ric Flair, everyone's written about Hulk Hogan, the really good book recently written about Brian Pillman. And I just thought, who is someone substantial who has been overlooked, who I can do some actual original research on, and maybe I can bring a few facts and a few thoughts about that's never been done before. Because I think it's important as wrestling fans or observers to bring something new and add something to the conversation. And I was always fascinated about Adrian. You know, he obviously passed away far too early before his time. He was probably one of those first wrestlers who did so. You know, there was that wave in the early 90s of Kerry Von Erich and Dino Bravo and people like that. And I was always fascinated about his story, you know, about how he left the WWF and he was getting back on the track and getting back into shape. And just as he was trying to turn his career around, if you like, the van crash happened. And I just thought, what a sad story. And yeah, just so much to him. East-West connection with Jesse Ventura, his time in Portland, his time in Japan. He crammed an awful lot into 12 or 13 years of a career. And I think a lot of fans my age and even younger than me have no idea. They just think it was one fight with Piper at WrestleMania 3. And there's so much more to him. And it was a real education for me writing about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's talk about his early years. Getting what was his main purpose getting into wrestling?
Yeah, so he was a high school wrestler. He grew up in Buffalo, in New York, and he tried out various sports. And I think at one point he was quite keen to go into football and to be a football player. He played a lot of hockey, and eventually he found himself gravitating towards pro wrestling. He'd obviously done amateur wrestling in high school and found himself connected with a old school wrestler called Fred Atkins, who didn't live too far away from him. And there's a funny story and some anecdotes which his daughter Angie told me, and I also found some stories in local newspapers from the time of when he started training with Fred Atkins. And Fred Atkins was a really old school shooter, you know, kind of Stu Hart kind of guy that some of your older viewers may have heard of. And he was kind of tough as nails, took no mess. And there's some funny anecdotes about Fred finding a young Adrian, or Keith as his real name was, you know, eating unhealthy food and just grabbing it off him and saying, no, I'm not going to let you do that. And he went and stayed with him, and Fred Atkins would report back every week to Adrian's mum about how he was doing. And so that's how he got his start in the business. And then just started moving around the territories in the late 1970s as lots of wrestlers did. I think it was 1974, off the top of my head, is when he started wrestling. Vancouver, it was one of his first territories. Made friends with Dennis Stamp, and just kind of picked up different styles, different friends, different associations at all these territories. Bounced around the Carolinas for Jim Crockett, where he first wrestled Randy and Lanny Poffo. And just moved around. And probably his first really substantial run was in probably Amarillo for the Funks, and then he moved on from there to working in Portland, where he formed a really good tag team with Rotten Ron Starr, where they won the tag titles. And yeah, it just went from there really. And I think the thing we saw with a lot of wrestlers, I say we, kind of looking back in hindsight, is all these wrestlers, they moved from territory to territory, building up a different style everywhere, learning how to work the crowd, learning how to manipulate fans and how to do different things in the ring. And it just made them all much more rounded. Not that modern wrestlers aren't, but it just gave them a different flavor every territory they went into. And that was what he built in when he then went to the AWA, the WWF. And it meant when you end up in the WWF, they were ready for that national stage. And and that's where he got his start really.
Yeah.
Are you able to speak to the friendship between Adrian Adonis and Roddy Piper?
Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a bit about that in the book. That a lot of that comes from Piper's own recollections. Piper spoke about it quite a lot, especially in his later years. He got quite nostalgic before Piper passed away in 2015. So there was one book written about Piper by his kids, and one autobiography that he wrote himself. He writes in quite great detail about his friendship with Keith, and that came from working together. They first came across each other in California, where they started working in that territory for Mike LaBelle. and they were both the same age. They were both 22. They formed a tag team with each other, and I think they bonded for a number of reasons. They both had, I wouldn't say a difficult start in life. Keith had loving parents, but he was adopted, and he knew he was adopted. And Roddy, meanwhile, I think had a tough childhood of his own. So they bonded over that. They had a real fraternal bond with each other. They were similar age, as I say. And I think in that California locker room, they found themselves banding together against kind of older wrestlers who maybe weren't so accepting of them. They were a lot smaller than those older wrestlers. And they just created a connection with each other that stayed with them for years. And what would happen, as would happen with a lot of wrestlers in the Territories era, is they would leave at different times, and then they would cross paths again in another territory. And that happened in Portland. They were baby faces, and then they were heels against each other in Portland, and then they obviously crossed paths historically again in the WWF. And what's really funny that a lot of people won't know is that they wrestled each other in that magnificent match at WrestleMania 3 in 1987. 10 years to the day, they actually wrestled each other in 1977, in March 1977, in a match, but obviously with a much smaller crowd. And listening to Piper in his later years talk about it, it becomes very clear that there was more than just they were old buddies who were backstage together, who drove down the road together, because that's true of a lot of wrestlers. But they were really like brothers. And Piper talks about having marriage problems and or having doubts about his career, and Adonis telling him to settle down and buy a house, and they were really supportive of each other. And one thing I noticed, which I detail in one of the later chapters in terms of Adonis's legacy, is that Piper was one of the people most responsible for keeping Adonis's name alive. He did a lot of promos, and you kind of missed them at the time, but he did one in '99 on Nitro when he was feuding with Vince Russo, where he lists off these dead wrestlers.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
He mentions Owen Hart, Gorilla Monsoon, and he mentions Adrian Adonis. When he was feuding with Goldust in 1996, ahead of WrestleMania 12, he mentions Adrian Adonis. And then there's this really, really touching promo that he does with Chris Jericho when they had the feud over the wrestler and Mickey Rourke. And he mentions Adrian Adonis. And I think it was really difficult for Piper in his later years to think about Adonis, because it made him think about his own mortality and all these wrestlers that he'd left behind. And yeah, you can get quite emotional looking at some of those old podcast interviews he did, where there's one in particular that he did with Stone Cold Steve Austin, where he describes their friendship, and the love that they had for each other really comes across.
JFB, I'm going to let you ask a question, but I'm going to bring up a point about Adrian and Piper here just really quickly. Is that their bond was so strong that not even the grave could keep them apart, because there was that episode of Celebrity Ghost Stories where Adrian comes and visits Piper.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy that their bond is so much that not even the grave can separate them.
Yeah.
It's a funny one, isn't it? And people will have their own opinions around ghosts and whether that's true or not. But I think what you have to respect is that he thought it was true, or at least that's what he said on that TV program.
Well, we have a show called Wrestling with the Paranormal, so we're all into that stuff.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. And all it does is it manifests and it shows that, yeah, the bond they had with each other. So yeah, respect for that. Absolutely.
Yeah. I know my first really experience of Adrian Adonis was in AWA. I had a friend who had a satellite dish, and so he got wrestling like all over the freaking world. And I know he had a pretty close relationship with Vern. I know Vern was really high on him. Do you want to speak on Vern and his relationship with Vern Gagne?
Absolutely. So he wrestled 3 separate occasions, 3 separate parts of his career for the AWA, for Vern Gagne. The most significant of which, of course, was from 79 to 81. He and future governor Jesse Ventura formed the East-West Connection, and that wouldn't have been possible without Vern Gagne bringing them in. And there's a really good interview that part of it is transcribed in place of, I didn't speak to Jesse Ventura, but there are anecdotes that I've transcribed to show the background of how they started working. And basically, Vern's approach to Jesse was that he used to have Superstar Graham in the AWA, and he wanted someone who could emulate him. And Jesse's response was, "I can do Superstar better than the Superstar can," which is quite a nice line. And they formed that tag team, and it was a little bit ahead of its time in some ways. You know, one way I describe the East-West connection, which I wasn't around at the time, so maybe I'm guessing, but AWA was, you know, it was older wrestlers, you know, Mad Dog, Vern, and the East-West connection were like a splash of colour to black and white, and they were very flashy. A lot of people think that it was a case of Jesse was the talker and the muscles, and Adrian was the worker. And Adrian certainly was the worker, but he was also a hell of a talker. That's what I want to get across in this book, and hopefully it will make some people go on YouTube and look up some of his interviews. And it's not as if he just stood there mute and never said anything. He had a really visceral way of talking in his promos, which he developed in the AWA. After finishing up his first run into WWF, he went back to Vern at the end of 1983, I want to say, and that was where he first came into contact with Hulk Hogan. He had a run with Hogan, and then interestingly they came back to each other, Adonis and Vern, in 1987. So his first stop after leaving WWF in the spring of 1987 was to go back to the AWA. And now by this point, obviously Adonis was very different to how he had been in 1981, and the AWA sadly was very, very different to how it had been. But I thought that was quite poignant that he had another 9-month run in the AWA, and he competed for titles all the way along. And what was interesting was the AWA was one of the only companies to pay tribute in 1988 to Adrian when he died, which I think is a mark of the respect that Vern showed for him. Vern and Greg did a bit of a tribute to him after he died, which was lovely to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's that show, Tales of the Territories, and a lot of the Adrian stories are popping up on there.
Yeah,
there's two really good ones. So do you have some good, funny Adrian stories that you can share with us?
There's a couple, yeah. I've noted a couple down. There's one that Rip Rogers gave me about working in Portland. Now, Portland was one of the only times in his career of that Adrian was a babyface, because he invariably he preferred playing heel, and he was brilliant at it. And he didn't naturally take to being a babyface. And if you look at him in some of his work and some of his promos in Portland, he kind of feels like a bit of a heel anyway. But he and Rotten One Star were the babyface tag champions, and Rip Rogers came in as a heel. And the rule at the time, I don't know if it was true for every territory, but the rule was that the heel leads, and the heel leads his partner through the match and calls the spots and things like that. But Adrian was very bossy and didn't want to do that, and they were bickering backstage, and Rip Rogers was the rookie and he was very confused, and Adrian's being a bit belligerent and he's saying, no, I'm going to lead. And so Roddy Piper had to intervene backstage and had to tell him to chill out and calm down. Rip needs to learn how to lead someone through the match. He's supposed to be the heel, and then Adrian kind of had to very grumpily back down and say, fine, you can be in charge, which he didn't like. Fumi Saito, the Japanese journalist, who's still going today, and he's brilliant, and he gave me a really cool story, and this is described about halfway through the book, where I cover a chapter of Adrian's career in New Japan, because he made several trips between 82 and 85 to New Japan, and he was a big star. Actually, he was part of a contingent like Hogan and Andre that used to go over to New Japan very regularly. And they developed a friendship and a relationship for several years, to the point where Adrian invited Fumi to come to his home in Bakersfield to visit for a summer in 1985, under the pretense of, come and see my big house, and you can do a photo shoot for a Japanese magazine, and you can cover how well I'm doing, and you can do a feature on me. But also because they were friends, and he wanted to have a friend over. And I think that whole week, and Angela was there, his daughter, and she remembers being 5 or 6 years old and being told to tidy up her room. And that whole week, Fumi just made quite funny observations about Adrian being a bit kind of childlike, almost like demanding to know when his dinner was going to be, wanting to have a cookie, and his wife B saying, "Oh no, don't have a cookie, you'll spoil your dinner." And Fumi just remembers he described getting off at the airport in Bakersfield, and Adrian just turning up in a bright red Corvette, just super cool heel with his shades on, and then he jumps in the car and he's smoking, and then they just pull off and they drive off at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and Fumi's just like, I don't know if we're ever going to make it to his house, but exactly like you would imagine a wrestling heel to pull up in a red Corvette and then drive off really, really fast. And I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah. I love his work in Japan. If you have New Japan World, go in and watch it. His work in Japan is freaking incredible.
Yeah.
He was just a monster. What was the lure for him to go to Japan?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I asked that to Dave Meltzer, which people who would have heard about. He was one of a couple of wrestling historians. Him and Bill Apter were both interviewed for the book, and I asked him why was this, from the late 70s to the early 80s onwards, there was just these waves. There were these tours that bands of wrestlers would do, and you would see the similar, Morocco, Orton, Murdoch, and Adonis became part of that group. What was the law? Exactly that question. And it was simple. It was simple financially. It was the best paid tour in wrestling. It paid even better than WWF at the time, and it was very lucrative. You'd go over there for 2 or 3 weeks. You'd get really well paid, and it was, I think they found it was very hard hitting in the ring, but it's obviously a crowd that respects real wrestling, and you don't have to do as many promos. There's not as much outside the ring stuff. You just go, you turn up, you get treated like a superstar, and you get very well paid. So, and that's what came across. I think you mentioned some of Adrian's matches. He had a great match with Tatsumi Fujinami, a really, really great match. And like you say, recommend people look it up. He mostly wrestled in tags and 6-man tags, but he did have a few singles matches as well, including one with Andre the Giant, which you might not think an Andre the Giant Adrian Adonis match would be much to watch, but it's quite interesting, and they both move around quite a bit.
Yeah, it's like two ballet dancers. Like they that match is amazing. It's on YouTube. It's on New Japan World. Go check it out. It's absolutely incredible. I want to talk about the North-South connection, because I was familiar with the Northeast connection. But I wasn't really that familiar with the North-South connection. How did they get together to form this tag team?
Well, that's an interesting link from what we just spoke about, because they got together, the East-West connection, just for anyone who's not familiar, that was Adrian's AWA tag team. Yeah. East-West connection was his tag team with Jesse Ventura. And then the North-South connection, which was a little bit of an in-joke. It was a bit of a pun, a bit of a play on the previous name. That was his WWF tag team with Dick Murdoch. Yeah. And they won the tag team titles, and they held them for 9-10 months. They had a really lengthy reign. And they became tag team partners over in Japan when they were on one of these tours, because what would happen was wrestlers who were on that tour, the international wrestlers, they would get thrown together. What combination is going to work? He actually in Japan had a more lengthy tag team with Bob Orton, but he worked a lot in Japan in '83, particularly in '84 with Murdoch, and it just started to gel. Vince McMahon Sr. saw them working together and really liked them and thought, I can bring these guys in. And they have the accolade, as far as my research goes, of being possibly the last guy signed by Vince McMahon Sr. before he passed away. So they were brought in at the end of 1983. There was a quite significant TV taping in December '83 where WWF ran the Chase Hotel in St. Louis, and they brought in a number. That was where Hogan came back. Gene Okerlund debuted, and that was where the sea change in pro wrestling was happening that night. And lower down the card, and not as important, but still quite significant, was Murdoch and Adonis debuted. And by April, they'd taken the tag belts off Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas, and they held them. They had a feud with the Wild Samoans. There was a brief period where it looked like they were teasing that Captain Lou Albano was going to become their manager, which is what he always did with the heel teams, but he didn't quite go. It didn't quite go the full way of him becoming their manager. But they wrestled some 6-man tags together, and then just towards the end of '84, they got into a feud with the Briscoes, which produced some really scintillating matches. Didn't quite go the full length. There's some conjecture and some suggestion that a Murdoch and Adonis versus the Briscoes was supposed to be the tag title match at WrestleMania 1, with the Briscoes going over, which I think makes sense. But Jack Briscoe retired effectively. He walked out and decided he didn't want to do it anymore. And then the belts were put on Wyndham and Rotunda instead. But some really incredible matches. And it's a similar story. His matches in the AWA, Portland, anywhere anyone wants to pick, my plea to people would be just move beyond that 1 year in '86 where he's doing the gay gimmick, and move to any other time period in his career, and you'll just find fascinating matches.
Yeah.
So it seemed like Hulk Hogan and Adrian Adonis were really good friends at one point.
They were.
Fast forward to Adrian Adonis' last match, and there's seems to be Hulk Hogan chooses to align himself more with Vince McMahon, and to the point where he doesn't even attend Adrian Adonis's funeral. Like, if you see that, there's that funeral card going around. Bret Hart's there, a lot of the wrestlers are there, but Hulk Hogan doesn't attend. Do you know anything about what happened between the?
No, I did reach out to Hulk's people and ask for an interview, and I was told he wasn't doing interviews at this time. So don't have anything firsthand from him. What I do notice on social media is about once a year, Hogan will tweet a picture of Adonis and say something, nostalgic about how he misses his friend and stuff like this. And I think it's true that for several years when they worked in Japan and the AWA, so we're talking kind of 82, 83, 84, they were really, really, really tight. They were really good friends. Adonis was at Hogan's funeral to Linda in December 1983. So they were really tight, and they were running buddies a lot of the time. They came from the AWA over to WWF together. That bit is true, and we do know that. But I think what is also true is that they faded apart from each other. Whether that was because Hogan became too big of a star, because Adonis, I don't know. Who knows what happened.
Well, we had
them.
Angie on the show a couple of years ago, and she just laid into Hogan about this. And that a couple of days later, Hulk Hogan's posting a picture of Adrian.
Yeah,
funny.
So
Funny
put
that,
the two together.
The one thing that he has said, which may throw some light on it, and I do allude to this in the book, is that there's a famous or notorious backstage fight in '86 between Adonis and Spivey, Dan Spivey, and most people who were there watching, Brian Blair and people like that, will say Spivey got the better of it. And the story,
He was a lot bigger too.
He was,
He's way bigger.
Yeah, he's a big guy. The story is that Hogan was one of the people who not only broke it up, which apparently is kind of against a bit of a wrestler's code that you should let them go at it, but also he potentially was one of the people that told Vince what had happened, and a little bit of ratting out his former friend. And I think what we can take from that is that Adonis maybe didn't appreciate that very much. You've ratted me out back to the office that I was having a fight. You should let me handle it, sort of thing. I'm that's conjecture. I'm speculating, but I think it's possibly something along those lines. But as you rightly say, the funeral, Angie has shared online the funeral card, which lists off a number of the wrestlers, some surprising names that people may be surprised to hear were at Adonis's funeral. But Hogan wasn't one of them. Don Morocco was there, Bob Orton, Piper, the Hart Foundation, Bret and Jim Neidhart, who Adonis was a little bit of a mentor to them in the WWF, to Bret Hart in particular. He has lots of very fond memories of him. The Guerrero family, he was very, very close with from his time in California. and obviously various others. But yeah, not Hogan, sadly.
Yeah, it's really sad because it would have been nice for Hogan to at least make the attempt to go to the funeral and pay respects to a guy he worked with for a lot of years. I mean, yeah, it's really it really is a shame.
I think Hogan really regrets it, like, because you can't go back, you can't fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one thing they can do is they can put him in the Hall of Fame. You know, I try and play it fairly neutral. You know, I want people to read the book and make their own mind up, but I don't want every page to be Adrian's my favorite wrestler. Adrian, I want people to read the book and take it in and make up their own mind up. But I think from the WWE's point of view, that's one thing they could do. You know, they didn't acknowledge it when he did die, and I think it would be difficult for them because people will bring up lots of clips of the gay gimmick and stuff like that and throw that at them on Twitter, and they have to decide what their position is and what their answer is to, you know, things like that. But I think that's easily done. If they
what we've done is we've just kind of, with our shirts and everything, we've kind of more accentuated with the leather and use the adorable in there too. So he's adorable. You don't have to be gay to be adorable. So
exactly. And I think there's a way of they could co-opt it, you know, in typical WWE fashion nowadays, where they could say we were actually ahead of the curve, having a gay wrestler and stuff like that, which wasn't quite what they were going for, but you know, they could make it work if they wanted to.
So let's wrap this up. If there's anything you want to say to close, and then tell everyone where you can get the book.
Absolutely, thank you. So yeah, just to say thank you to you guys for having me on, and thank you to your viewers and your listeners. Implore everyone to give the book a look. It's available on Amazon. It's on a paperback if you're a traditional reader. It's also available as an ebook if you read on Kindle. Really implore people. It's not too expensive. It's got a lot of wrestling history that I don't think people. It's got a lot of original research, a lot of original interviewees in there. Like I've said, some Hall of Famers: Tully Blanchard, Don Morocco, Lanny Poffo, one of the last interviews he did before he sadly passed away, and a couple of rarities that don't get interviewed a lot. Someone called Terry Daniels, that people may remember from the old days of WWF, and many more besides, supported by the family with the input of his daughters very kindly, and some really interesting research has gone into it. So if anyone out there is thirsty for a little bit of wrestling history, a little bit of wrestling knowledge, just give it a look and leave a review.
Yeah, you'll have to send me a link, and we'll put it in the show notes at the end here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll definitely put it in the show notes for sure. So
excellent. Well, thanks very much for having me, guys.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Hi. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Hello there.
Wow, just flipping from British guy to British guy. Wow.
Hey guys.
One side or another.
You know something, that was actually a really nice discussion. I could have listened to that guy talk for hours. Absolutely amazing listen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, John, for coming on, and we greatly appreciate it. Now we get to part 2, if you will, and that is this. Our WrestleMania Night 2. We can recap night 1. We'll talk briefly about it, but we want to talk about the predictions, if you will, for night 2. But did both of you guys watch night 1?
I've seen part of it. I've not seen all of it yet.
I watched it, and it seems really watered down from what it used to be. It always feels that way.
Yeah. I thought I thought the last match, the main event, between Sammy and KO versus the Bloodline, the Usos, was the match of the night.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that was gold.
Yeah.
If they could make everything be similar to that, you would have an amazing product.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the Rhea Ripley, Charlotte Flair was not bad, but my question is, Charlotte Flair is sitting on the mat, or sitting on the next to the ring on the floor and smiling and clapping. I'm wondering if this might be her last big run before her contract's up.
Someone mentioned in the chat that Charlotte Flair didn't seem like she was into it.
No, she looked very bored. with that match. Like, she did not look like she was in a WrestleMania match. It looked like a Friday Night SmackDown match.
This is an interesting thing, though. So we spoke about the yesterday on night one. Do you think the placement of the match actually was probably a factor there?
I think it had to do with that. I was really surprised because I originally thought that would main event and the tag team would come in about halfway through. But I'm glad that they did the tag match last, but Charlotte second to last. I thought that worked out really well.
Was Charlotte a little salty that it wasn't the main? Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, she's a salty girl. She's a salty girl.
She's related to Alec Taney.
She learned her saltiness from the foot of the master, otherwise known as Alec Haney.
Maybe she'll get the word.
Aye, let me teach you how to be salty.
The only thing more salty than me is the Dead Sea, my friend.
Aye.
Let's get to night 2. Let's go with the. I don't know if this is going to be the match order or not, but we're going to go with this one first. Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez versus Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler versus Natalya and Shotzi versus Chelsea Green, and a surprise replacement for Carmella, and that is Sonya Deville. Canada Dry, you go first. What are your thoughts on this match? Who do you think takes it?
You gotta put the star over, which is Ronda Rousey. They've got to win.
Yeah.
I don't see the other team winning. But it's good that they're on the card. It's weird seeing Ronda Rousey in like a not a big profile match.
Yeah, it does not feel right. It feels like a very weird puzzle piece. Liam, what are your thoughts on this match?
Yeah, I can only see Ronda Rousey winning this match. I feel like it will be an interesting match, but I'm not expecting no big things, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. I think, in all honesty, I think that Shayna is going to carry this match and be involved more than Ronda, because Ronda's still dealing with injuries. And so I think the lion's share is going to be
Oh, do you think that's the reason why they had her lose the belt?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's dealing with a knee injury, so I have a feeling Shayna's going to be doing the lion's share.
Because it would have made more sense for Ronda to lose it to Rhea Ripley.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So let's go to our next match: Brock Lesnar versus Omos, or whatever he's going by.
Osmosis Jones is what we call him.
Yeah, Osmosis Jones. Liam, your thoughts on this match?
Boring. I am really not looking forward to this at all. I mean, I'm not a big Brock Lesnar fan. I feel like he's hogging the spotlight in a way, and Omos is still a bit unproven in my opinion, so I'm not really expecting anything, again, spectacular. Yeah,
exactly. Canada Dry, your thoughts?
But who are you going with?
Yeah, who are you going to go with?
I'd say Brock Lesnar. Screw it.
Yeah. You got to put him over. I mean, you just have to put him over. It doesn't make sense. Canada Dry, your thoughts?
If Brock is taking some time away, I always think the old school way of doing things is to put someone else over.
Yeah.
And where does Osmosis Jones go from here if he loses?
To the moon.
Well, he's got to win. If he doesn't win, but I can also see him beating Brock Lesnar and then WWE just dropping the ball, not keeping him a big name.
Oh no, it's going to look like a monkey humping a football. Like it's not going to look good. I mean, I get it. Like, you have this 7'4" tall behemoth from Nigeria and Omos, and then you have Country Farm Brock.
Country Crock Brock.
This has to be the first match. Like, get this match out of the way, get it out and done as quickly as possible.
It would be a good way to start the show too, instead of that high profile match to start.
Yeah. Like Omos will take, Omos, I think, will him being 7'4", like five strides, and he's already at the ring with that freaking ramp. But Brock Lesnar, I mean, unless he's going to drive a tractor down the ramp to the ring, it's just like it's going to take him forever because he doesn't saunter, he just crawls.
Okay, so Liam's going with Brock. I'm going with Osmosis Jones. Who you going with?
I'm going to go with Brock. Yeah, Brock's going to take time off, but I think, in all honesty, like, it just doesn't make sense. Omos is not ready to have a big win like that against Brock Lesnar. So let's go to some of the real matches. Let's go to
It only gets better from here.
They only get better from here, guys. I promise. Edge versus the Demon Finn Balor in Hell in a Cell. Canada Dry, go first.
I'm excited about this. We're getting Gangrel, possibly Christian.
Possibly
Maybe,
Christian.
that's the rumor.
Yeah.
We're getting Brood Edge versus the Demon.
Yeah.
So this is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Like, I think this will be the highlight, one of the highlights of this show.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Anytime Hell in a Cell is involved, it's usually a highlight. Liam.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, sorry, I didn't pick anyone.
Who are you picking?
I will go with Finn Balor.
Finn Balor. Okay, he's going with the Demon.
Interesting. So yeah, I agree with Canada Dry. I'm looking forward to this match. I mean, every time we see Hell in a Cell, it's always a great match. I'm expecting obviously some sort of shenanigans from Judgment Day and obviously the Brood, but yeah, I think Edge is going to set this one. I really do.
I'm going to tell you this. I am going to completely fanboy geek out if Christian shows up with the Brood. I love Tony Khan, but I will love Tony Khan even more if he allows this to happen. Like, when we see Tony Khan at the annual All Effin' Wrestling picnic, I'm going to give him a big hug.
I thought it was a pancake.
The
breakfast.
Yeah, pancake breakfast. And I'm going to go with I'm going to go with Edge. I think he was in one of the first Hell in the Cells, and I think he knows how to maneuver around that ring encased in steel. So I'm going with Edge on this one, but this is going to be one hell.
Who did Liam go with?
Edge.
Yeah, Edge. Yeah.
Why are you guys always going against me here? Jeez.
I mean, nothing against Finn Balor, and it would make sense to put Balor over just because Judgment Day is really rocking. But after Dominic lost last night and Rhea Ripley won, and Damon Priest not even in a match, it just feels weird. Like, you got to give Judgment Day that win, but I think they're gonna forego that and give it to Edge. Just because of Christian. I like, even if Christian doesn't show up as Gangrel, I'm still happy. I'm still ecstatic.
Yeah.
So we have the Intercontinental belt. The Intercontinental title, it's a three-way, if you will. Gunther, I'm not going to call him Gunther. Walter versus McIntyre versus Sheamus for the IC title in a triple threat match. Liam, you go first. Wax poetic.
I think this is going to be the match of the night because, I mean, Gunther over the past couple of months has done absolutely amazing. He did well in the Royal Rumble. I saw the number one contender match. When I heard it was a triple threat, I'm like, yes, let's do this. So, yeah, I think that Gunther's going to retain, but I'm expecting probably the match of the night for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Canada Dry.
Do you think maybe this match will be a banger? This match will be a banger. I don't see Sheamus or McIntyre walking out with the title. If Gunther does lose, it will be in a one-on-one match.
Yeah,
but it would be a good way for him to not be involved if losing the title. You could easily do that, not hurt his luster at all. But I see Gunther pulling off the W here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is going to be. I have a feeling this is going to be the match of the night. We haven't had a decent Intercontinental title run since '80s, since the days of
the
Macho Man. Yeah,
dig it.
I mean, dig it. And then, we haven't had a good, Scott Hall. Like, we have not, Honky Tonk Man, we haven't had a good IC title run in what seems like decades.
So you guys all going Gunther here?
I'm going Gunther as well. And the reason why is just because that man needs the belt for a couple more months before he drops it and goes after the world title. Because I would love to see either Cody or Roman versus Gunther would be an amazing match. Amazing. So let's go to the Raw women's fight for the Raw women's title. Bianca Belair, the EST versus Asuka in her new makeup and kind of a little cray-cray. Let's go with Canada Dry first. Canada Dry, your thoughts on the Raw women's title match?
This is my favorite version of Asuka.
Yeah.
You don't need to speak English to play this character.
No, not at all.
You just have to act a little crazy, put some blue mist in your mouth, let it drip out a little bit all over your Joker makeup. I love this version of Asuka.
Yeah.
It's so much character. And look for Asuka to win that title tonight.
All right. Liam.
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree. I feel like Asuka did come a bit stale, so the fact she's like reinvented herself, as kind of Dry said again, she's gone a little bit cray-cray, but you know what? That's good. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. This is one where I was really torn, but if I had to pick, I'm going to say Asuka as well.
Okay. I mean, these are two wrestlers that are power-based wrestlers. Bianca Belair can pack a punch, so can Asuka. Like, there is no doubt. But I've seen Asuka when she wrestled in Shimmer, and she wore the Kana face paint, and I liked it a little bit better because it looked a lot more like corpse paint than it does with the sparkly blue and stuff. But this is going to be one hell of a match. This could steal WrestleMania night for sure. I as much as I love Bianca Belair, I think she needs a little time off. Give it to Asuka. I think Asuka takes it. I think it's going to be one hell of a match. I think these two women are going to literally beat the living hell out of each other for our entertainment. So I'm going Asuka. And
there goes. I think she should be switched to the other brand and go after the other title.
Oh, Rhea Ripley? Yeah. Oh, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that, no doubt, because that women's division is very thin right now. And I think you have four legitimate contenders. You got Rousey, you got Flair, you got, Becky Lynch, you got Asuka, you got Bianca Belair, and that's it.
And Bayley.
And Bayley, yeah. But I think Bayley right now, I think what's holding Bayley down is Damage Control. I mean, it's weighing her down like an anchor.
You know what the thing about Damage Control is? They look like such average girls together.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you have one like really beautiful girl, and then you got like they're all average. Like you don't want to diss them or body shame or anything like that.
Yeah.
They're fine. They're not ugly or anything like that, but they're just very, very average looking.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get to our last match. This, of course,
is the main event.
It is the main event. We are talking about Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, the undisputed Universal World Title. Liam, you go first. Wax poetic.
Okay, so it has to be Cody Rhodes. You know what I mean? The whole storyline's there. Personally, I'm not digging the storyline. I feel like it's not been as good build-up as we actually hope. But based on the whole premise and everything, yeah, it has to be Cody Rhodes who wins it, to be honest.
Okay. Canada Dry.
So this little duck I've been talking to for the last couple weeks, what's that? Okay. He says that Cody Rhodes is going to finish the story tonight.
Yeah.
Cody Rhodes is going to do what his dad never did and become the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. And I really see Roman Reigns maybe taking a break, maybe going to Hollywood, doing a movie or two.
Yeah.
And no one better than Cody to take up that mantle now. He's a wrestler's wrestler.
Yeah.
He reminds me a lot of like your Bret Harts and your and guys like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I love Roman Reigns as a heel. I love this run he's been on. I think he's proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that he is capable of carrying a company on his back. But you have to take that time off. You can't wrestle. And even the sporadic amount he's been wrestling, because he's not wrestling every night. Cody Rhodes is, and so Dustin never won. Dusty never won, but Cody Rhodes has to win this match. And if for some reason Vince McMahon, with his black hair now and his black mustache, looks like a railroad villain.
Well, he's a Cody fan though. He's got the same dash.
Oh yeah, he looks like Cody from he looks like Cody from back in the day with the mustache and the dyed hair.
You know, it'd be cool if Cody came out to Smoke and Mirrors. Whoa! They're not like Smoke and Mirrors.
I'm gonna go with Cody Rhodes. I think it just makes more sense because the chase hasn't really been that great, but the promos between the two of them, and especially Roman telling him, Dusty never talked about you. Dusty didn't think you were the guy, like that stuck. And that really was a fork in the gut. But I'm going Cody Rhodes.
Well, I disagree with you on this. I think the chase started a year ago when he was Seth Rollins' WrestleMania opponent. Yeah. So it's been, even though he got injured, it was that year long. I've come back, to take that WWE title, and a year later he takes it. That's pretty cool, Chase.
Yeah, absolutely. So so now my question to you guys is this: are we going to see Winged Eagle, or at least a facsimile thereof, instead of carrying around two belts? Or are they going to separate the belts at some point? Canada Dry.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah.
Just imagine Raw on Monday. Cody comes out with the belt.
Yeah.
Or belts. And they just exchange it for the Winged Eagle belt. And then you don't even need to have no match or anything. You can give the big gold to someone on SmackDown. Who cares? Do a tournament.
Yeah.
And just straight up, he's the new WWE champion. And then split them up.
Okay. Liam, your thoughts?
Yeah, it has to be the Winged Eagle. I mean, when I look back at all the belts, all the designs, the Winged Eagle is actually one of my personal favorites. So, yeah, I would love to see that obviously come back. As regards to two champions, I'm looking at the roster and it's like, is there really two people you could set as champions? Cody's one, not really. So, I still keep it as one champion personally.
Well, that would be a step back for them a bit, I think, because you got the two Raw. You'd have to do to everything. Like you have just to go on a bit of a rant, the SmackDown Women's Champion, the Raw Women's Champion. It's just sounds so tacky for those belts.
Yeah, here's the thing.
Give them real names.
Yeah. This is what bugs me though. It's like you've got two tag team titles, but the tag division is not great. You've got two women's, but as we spoke about earlier, the women's division is slightly thin. I feel at the minute with WWE the way they are, they shouldn't have like two belts for two different things.
Well, you could unify everything.
That's true.
That's what I would personally do. I mean, that's what I'd do. I just feel like
when would you do it?
You could slowly do it, right? Implement it slowly each time.
Yeah.
Here we're gonna do it here. We're gonna do it here.
Yeah. So what we could do is now we could obviously unify the world title. The tag titles, we could do that now. Obviously, now that we've Sammy and Kevin.
Yeah.
Later down the line, I feel like you could do the women's one, but that could like.
I don't think you
slowly-
need to do the US and the IC though.
Oh no, I think keep them as these, but I feel like the women's one need to be one personally.
Yeah.
So you don't really need to do much because you could just unify those belts on Cody and the tag team division as well, just like that.
Yep.
So the only one which is left is the women's division.
Yeah, I mean they need to unify the belts, period. But I would love to see Winged Eagle. Oh, that is my all-time favorite WWF belt, and it needs to come back because that's the belt that represents Dusty more than the blue, the blue belt in the universal in the black belt. You
Well, I
need
love
to
it just because it's Bret Hart's belt.
yeah, exactly. I like it because it is. It's Bret Hart's belt, and it looks beautiful. So, guys, that is it. That is the time we are getting the.
Well,
alert.
hold on, we gotta screech back for a second because I got a list.
Uh-oh.
Hang on. Okay, I'm ready.
All right. You're not on the list, Liam.
Oh, screw it. Anyway, you were saying.
All right. So, again, Caleb has made the list.
Oh, that's not good. He's 2 weeks in a row now.
Yeah, he called Tony Khan evil.
Oh, well, he's definitely on the list. He should be.
Yes,
number
like
one.
what the hell? and then he's like, then yesterday he goes, WrestleMania is better than AEW any day. I'm like, what?
Does he not realize what prediction league is in?
Yeah, I know. And then, all right, so now we got Abdus. That's Bree's henchman.
Yeah.
And
Oh god.
Bree and Abdus injured both me and Dally in AFW prediction league. So that's why Abdus is on the list. Justin is on the list because he laughed about it.
Laughing
Justin, I
5,000
expected better.
laughed about it. Good Lord.
And then of course Bree is on the list for actually injuring me.
Yeah.
She should stay on the list.
But I want to give her a very, very angry happy birthday, Bree.
Happy birthday, Brie.
Happy birthday,
Angrily.
Bree.
Say it angrily.
Happy birthday, Brie.
Birthday, Bree.
Yeah. There you go. Now do your whole rigmarole.
Okay, well, just because of that, to all those people.
You know what? You just made the list.
You just made the list. Guys, that is our show.
Of course,
We are-
that is brought to you by backshaves.com.
Yes. The list is brought to you by backshaves.com. Backshaves.com, where you can get someone to come out and shave your back at work, at home, while you're playing. It doesn't matter. They will come out and they will shave your back.
Just really quickly, you had Dollywood shave your back last time?
I did. It was fabulous. It was like butter.
And was her husband just standing by, like watching?
He sat in the corner and he was drinking a soda, and he was keeping an eye, make sure that the JFB doesn't get handsy at all. So
Why do I feel like a lawsuit's coming?
Dollywood said this with pride. She's I'm the one who did it.
yeah,
So-
she said it. So. All right, so that is our show. So if you want to get a hold of us, you want to get in contact with us, want to check in on us, see what we're doing, there's two ways to go about doing it. One is to go to youtube.com/effing wrestling, click like and subscribe and share. Share it to the world.
Sharing is caring.
Yeah. Do you not learn that from kindergarten? You share, damn it. You share. Now, you can go to our website, effingwrestling.com, where you can go all the way to the bottom, and all our social media links are there, including the one for AFW, our prediction league, which according to Prediction League Monthly, this will be the 4th month. We are the number one prediction league.
And of course, this
in the
guy's
world.
on the cover.
He's on the cover. Yes, he is. It's our
Damn
job.
it.
Yeah. If you like t-shirts, and we know that you do, there is a multitude of t-shirts. We have the All Effin' Wrestling Kool-Aid shirts. You can get those. You can get the All Effin' Wrestling shirt as worn by this sexy mamacita, Natalia Markova. You can get the middle fingers. You can go to prowrestlingtees.com /effing wrestling. Now, because we talked about Adrian Adonis. We talked with the author, John. If you want to support Adrian Adonis, read the book and then go out and go to your local Pro Wrestling Tees store at prowrestlingtees.com/Adrian Adonis, where you can get the adorable Adrian Adonis t-shirt. So, on behalf of Canada Dry, on the behalf of the effing Magician, on the behalf of the JFB,
remember to just keep fighting.
woo! Uppercut. Hit the outro.
Hadouken.
This has been an effing worldwide media production. You can find us on all social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and others. Head over to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/effing wrestling. And while you're there, click like and subscribe. Want some swag? Head to our store at prowrestlingtees.com/effing wrestling. You can find all these links and much more at our awesome website, effingwrestling.com. As the JFB always says, you can book it. We love you, Adrian.